I watched my 17-year-old daughter put something in my coffee. She didn't see me. She was standing at the kitchen counter, back turned, sliding a small white packet from her hoodie pocket. Her hands were shaking. She tore the corner, poured the powder into my cup, stirred it, placed the spoon down, walked away like nothing happened. I stood in the hallway, frozen. This was the morning of the biggest business deal of my life. $15 million. 2 years of negotiations. I was signing the papers at noon. And my daughter just poisoned my coffee. I walked to the counter, looked at the cup. The coffee was dark, normal. You couldn't see anything dissolved in it. I heard her footsteps upstairs. Controlled. I looked at the second cup on the counter. Her cup. The green mug she uses every morning. Still full. No powder. No tempering. I picked up my cup. Set it down in front of her seat. Picked up her cup. Set it down in front of mine. Then, I sat down, and waited. She came downstairs 5 minutes later. Sat across from me. Didn't look at the coffee. Didn't look at me. She picked up her phone. Started texting. I picked up the green mug. Drank slowly. She finally looked up. Saw the green mug in my hands. Her eyes moved to her seat. Saw my cup sitting there. Something flickered across her face. Just for a second. Then it was gone. She picked up my cup. Brought it to her lips. I said, "Good morning." She lowered the cup. Smiled. Said, "Morning, Dad." Took a long drink. I kept watching. Waiting for something to happen. A reaction. A cough. Anything. She finished half the cup. Wiped her mouth. Grabbed her backpack. "I have a test first period. I'll see you tonight." She walked to the door. I said, "Maya." She stopped. Didn't turn around. I said, "How long have you been working with your mother?" She turned around slowly. Looked at me. Her face was pale now. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then she dropped the backpack. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the kitchen island. Her fingers went white. She looked at the cup. Looked at me. Her eyes were wide. Terrified. She said, "You switched them." I didn't answer. She said, "Dad, call 911, now." I said, "Tell me what you put in that cup." She collapsed. I called 911. While I was on the phone, she was on the floor. Convulsing. Her eyes rolled back. Foam at the corners of her mouth. The operator was talking. I wasn't listening. I was looking at my daughter, dying on the kitchen floor. And the only thing I could think was that I had done this. I switched the cups. But she put the poison in mine. I need to go back. You need to understand how we got here. Because this didn't start with the coffee. This started 3 years ago. And it started with a woman named Claire. I met Claire at a business conference in Chicago. She was sharp. Beautiful in a way that made you nervous. Dark eyes that never blinked. She laughed at my jokes. Asked about my company. Touched my arm when she talked. I was 38. Divorced for 2 years. Lonely in a way I didn't want to admit. My first marriage ended because I worked too much. My ex-wife said I didn't have room in my life for anyone but myself. Maybe she was right. Claire was different. She understood business. She understood ambition. She said things like, "A man who builds something from nothing deserves a partner who can keep up." 3 months later, I proposed. My mother didn't like her. She said, "Something is wrong with that woman, I can't explain it, but something is wrong." I laughed it off. My mother had never liked any woman I brought home. My sister Karen said, "She's too perfect, Mark. Nobody is that perfect." I didn't listen. The wedding was a disaster. Claire's family took over everything. Her mother, Linda, changed the seating chart 2 hours before the ceremony. Moved my family to the back tables. Put her relatives in the front. When my mother confronted Linda, Linda said, "In our family, the bride's side sits up front. That's tradition." My mother said, "In my family, we respect people." Linda smiled. Said, "Well, we can't all have the same traditions." The ceremony started late because Claire's brother David was drunk. He gave a speech at the altar. Slurred words about how Claire finally found a man with real money. People laughed. My family didn't. Claire stood next to me, holding my hand, smiling. She didn't say a word to defend me. During the reception, David's wife Sarah got into a screaming match with my sister Karen. Sarah accused Karen of looking at David the wrong way. Karen said Sarah was insane. David grabbed Karen's arm. Left a bruise. I saw it happen. I was 10 feet away. Claire grabbed my arm before I could move. She whispered, "Not tonight. Please, don't make a scene." I didn't make a scene. Karen saw me see it. Saw me do nothing. She walked out of the reception. Didn't speak to me for 4 months. That was my wedding. That was the day I should have left. But I didn't. 6 months into the marriage, Claire got pregnant. We had Maya. And for a brief time, things felt good. Claire was soft with the baby. I was happy. I thought maybe I'd been wrong about everything. Then Claire's mother Linda moved in. She said it was temporary. She was between homes. She said 2 weeks. She stayed for 2 years. Linda ran that house like a prison warden. She reorganized my kitchen. Threw out my mother's recipes that I'd kept since I was a kid. Changed the laundry detergent because the old one smelled like poor people. When I confronted Claire about it, Claire said, "She's my mother. She helped raise me. Can't you just be grateful?" Linda started making comments about my business. Said I was playing at being a CEO. Said Claire deserved better than a man who worked in a warehouse turned office park. I ignored it. I told myself it was just talk. Then the phone calls started. Claire would leave the room to take calls. Late at night, I'd hear her whispering in the bathroom. She'd say things like, "He doesn't know," and "We need to wait." One night I picked up the extension in the bedroom. She was in the kitchen. A man's voice said, "The transfer is ready, as soon as he signs." Claire said, "He'll sign next month, just be patient." I hung up. My hands were shaking. When I asked her about it the next morning, she looked at me with those dark eyes. Said, "It was a client call. You're paranoid. This is what your mother does to you. She puts these ideas in your head." She called my mother. Right in front of me. Put it on speaker. Said, "Linda, tell Mark you've been saying things about my phone calls." My mother, confused, said, "What? I haven't said anything about phone calls." Claire hung up, turned to me, said, "See? You're making things up. You need help." Gaslighting. I didn't know the word then, but that's what it was. Systematic, professional. She made me doubt my own ears. Then my sister Karen's situation got worse. Karen married David, Claire's brother. I know how that sounds. I tried to stop it. Karen said she loved him. She said he was different when they were alone. He wasn't different. 3 months into the marriage, Karen called me at 2 a.m, crying. David had locked her in the bathroom, taken her phone. She was calling from the landline. I drove over, broke the bathroom door. David was sitting in the living room watching TV. He looked at me and said, "She's hysterical. You know how women get." I wanted to kill him. Karen begged me not to call the police. She said it would make things worse. She said David's family would turn everyone against her. Claire found out. She said Karen was exaggerating. She said David had a temper, but he'd never hurt Karen. She said my sister was dramatic. 2 weeks later, Karen showed up at my house with a black eye. Linda answered the door, looked at Karen's face, said, "What did you do to provoke him?" Karen looked at me. I was standing behind Linda. I said, "Karen, come in." Linda stepped aside. But that night, Claire told me that if I kept interfering in David's marriage, it would damage our relationship with her family. And her family was important for my business. She said, "You need the Henderson connection, you know that. David's father knows people, don't throw that away over Karen's marital problems." I stayed quiet. Karen stopped calling after that. A year passed. My business grew. The $15 million deal started taking shape. It was going to change everything. I'd finally have the kind of money that would put me in a different world. Claire changed too. She became colder, more controlled. She started dressing differently, wearing expensive things I didn't remember buying. She had new jewelry, a new car. I checked the accounts. Money was moving. Small amounts at first, then larger. When I asked Claire, she said, "I'm managing the household budget. You told me to handle it." I hadn't told her to handle it. Maya was 13 now. She was changing too. She used to be my kid, my shadow. She'd sit in my office after school and do homework while I worked. She'd ask about my business. She said she wanted to be like me. Then Claire started taking Maya to family meetings at Linda's house. I wasn't invited. Maya started coming home quiet, distant. She stopped sitting in my office. One night, I asked Maya what they talked about at those meetings. She looked at me, said, "Mom says you're going to leave us. She says you're planning to take the money and run." I said, "That's not true." Maya said, "That's what Grandma says too. They showed me documents." I asked, "What documents?" She walked away. I went to Claire, demanded to know what she was telling our daughter. Claire said, "I'm preparing her for reality. You think I don't know about the offshore account? You think I'm stupid?" I didn't have an offshore account. She said, "Linda's lawyer found it. We have the paperwork." She showed me papers. Forged. Beautifully forged. Account numbers. Bank statements. My signature. I said, "I never opened this account." Claire said, "You're gaslighting me now, just like your mother taught you." She had turned my own word against me, the word I finally learned. She used it first. I went to a lawyer. He said the forgeries were good. Really good. He said if Claire took this to court, I'd have a hard time proving they were fake. I started sleeping in the guest room. Then Maya stopped talking to me completely. For 6 months, my daughter didn't say a single word to me. Not good morning, not good night. She looked through me like I was furniture. I tried everything. I left notes on her desk. I bought her things. I tried to sit her down. She'd get up and leave. Claire watched it happen. She didn't intervene. She didn't need to. She'd already done the work. 6 months of silence from my child. Do you know what that does to a person? You start to believe maybe you deserve it. Maybe you are what they say you are. I became weak. I know that now. I was weak because I loved them. And love without boundaries is just self-destruction. 3 weeks before the coffee incident, something changed. Karen called me. First time in 8 months. She was whispering. She said, "Mark, I found something. David's office. There's a file. It has your name on it." I said, "What kind of file?" She said, "It's about your business, the deal. There are emails between Claire and David, and someone else, a name I don't recognize. They're planning to take the company after the deal goes through." I said, "Take it how?" She said, "I don't know, but there's more. Mark, there's something about Maya. They've been giving her something, medication. I think it's to make her compliant. I think they've been drugging her." My blood went cold. I said, "Are you sure?" She said, "I saw the bottles, in Linda's bathroom, Maya's name on them. But they're not from a doctor. Mark, they're changing her. She's not the same kid." I drove to Karen's house that night. David was out. Karen gave me copies of the emails. 53 pages. I read them in my car in a parking lot at midnight. The emails were between Claire, David, Linda, and a man named Richard Sloan, a corporate lawyer. Claire's family's lawyer. The plan was this: let me sign the $15 million deal. Then, use the forged offshore account documents to file for divorce. Claim I hid assets. Get a court order freezing the company accounts. While I was tied up in court, Claire and her family would move to take control of the board. They'd use David to pressure Karen into silence. Within 6 months, I'd be out of my own company. And Maya, my daughter. She wasn't in on it. She was a tool. The emails talked about keeping her emotionally aligned with Claire. One email from Linda said, "The medication is working. She barely looks at him anymore. Good. We need her on our side when this goes public." They were drugging my daughter to turn her against me. I sat in that parking lot for an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something in me just turned off. The weak man who'd been sleeping in the guest room. The man who believed he deserved his daughter's silence. That man died in that parking lot. I made copies of everything. Hired my own forensic accountant. Hired a private investigator. Told them both to be silent and fast. I didn't confront Claire. I didn't confront Linda. I went home. Slept in the guest room. Ate breakfast with my family. Smiled. 2 weeks later, I was sitting at the kitchen counter. It was the morning of the deal. I was dressed, ready. My phone was buzzing with texts from my business partner. Maya came downstairs. She made coffee. 2 cups. I watched her. She was mechanical, like she was following instructions. Then she pulled the packet from her hoodie. I knew what it was. The same medication Linda had been giving her. But this dose was different. The packet was bigger. This wasn't about compliance anymore. I watched her pour it in. Steer it. Walk away. And I made my choice. I switched the cups. She came back down. Sat down. Drank from my cup. I drank from hers. I said, "Good morning." She said, "Morning, Dad." Then she collapsed. The ambulance took 12 minutes. The longest 12 minutes of my life. I rode in the back, holding her hand. The paramedics were asking me questions. What did she take? How much? When? I said, "I don't know." That was a lie. I knew exactly what she took. Because my investigator had already tested the medication from Linda's bathroom. It was a sedative. In high doses, it caused respiratory depression. In the amount in that packet, it could stop a teenager's heart. Linda gave my daughter this stuff for months. Small doses to keep her docile. And now Claire had given Maya a lethal dose and told her to put it in my coffee. My own wife used my daughter to kill me. Maya was in the hospital for 4 days. On the 2nd day, the police came. Claire was in the waiting room. Crying. Performing. She told the detectives that Maya had been acting strange for months. She said I'd been emotionally abusing the family. She said I must have done something to the coffee. She was good. She was so good. The detectives looked at me differently after she talked. On the 3rd day, they arrested me. Assault. Endangerment of a child. They said I switched the cups knowing the coffee was poisoned. They said I tried to kill my own daughter. I sat in an interrogation room for 6 hours. I didn't say a word. I asked for my lawyer. My lawyer arrived with the forensic accountant and the private investigator. They walked into that police station with 53 pages of emails. Bank records showing Claire's unauthorized transfers. Medical reports from Karen's doctor documenting the abuse. And a sworn statement from a pharmacy tech who confirmed Linda had been buying sedatives without a prescription for over a year. The detective read the emails. Looked at me. Said, "Why didn't you lead with this?" I said, "Because I needed to know how far they'd go." He said, "You let your daughter drink poison to find out?" I said, "I knew the dose wouldn't kill her. I'd already had it tested." He stared at me for a long time. Then he said, "You're either the smartest man I've ever met or the worst father." I said, "I'm both." They released me. Arrested Claire. Arrested Linda. Arrested David. Karen pressed charges. 3 other women came forward about David. He'd been doing it for years. Claire's family knew. They protected him. The DA built a case. Conspiracy to commit murder. Vowed. Child endangerment. Domestic abuse. Claire sat in a courtroom 3 weeks later. Handcuffed. Her hair was messy. No makeup. She looked small. Ordinary. She looked at me across the courtroom. For the first time in 3 years, I saw something real in her eyes. Not coldness. Not calculation. Fear. She mouthed 2 words at me. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Maya was in the courtroom too. She was sitting next to me. She'd been off the medication for 2 weeks. The real Maya was coming back. Slowly. She was confused, angry, heartbroken. During a break, Maya said, "Dad, I didn't know what was in the packet. Mom said it was vitamins. She said you'd been stressed and I should put them in your coffee to help you." I said, "I know." Maya said, "She used me." I said, "I know." Maya started crying. He had her. Right there in the courthouse hallway. My daughter cried into my chest for 20 minutes. The first real emotion she'd shown in over a year. The trial lasted 8 days. On the 6th day, something happened that no one expected. Claire took the stand. She asked to speak without her lawyer present. The judge allowed it. She sat in that chair, looked at the jury, and said, "I want to tell you the truth. The whole truth, not the truth my mother scripted for me." She told the jury everything. The plan. The forgery. The medication. All of it. But then she said something that turned the entire courtroom silent. She said, "My mother controlled all of it, not just Mark, me too. I've been on those same medications since I was 19 years old. Linda started giving them to me when I was in college, to keep me calm, compliant, loyal to the family." The prosecutor said, "Are you saying you were also drugged?" Claire said, "I'm saying I was a prisoner in my own family since before I met Mark. Linda chose Mark for me, not because she liked him, because she saw a weak man with a growing company. She said he'd be easy to control. She said I needed to marry him, get close to the business, and wait for instructions." She looked at me. Mark wasn't weak. He was trusting. There's a difference, and I destroyed him for it. The courtroom was silent. Then Claire said, "But there's something else, something Mark doesn't know." The judge said, "Go on." Claire looked at me again. Her eyes were wet. She said, "Mark, your mother knew." I said, "What?" Claire said, "Linda contacted your mother before the wedding, told her the plan, offered her a percentage of the company once it was taken. Your mother didn't just dislike me, Mark. She was in on it from the beginning. She played the role of the suspicious mother-in-law to make it look like she was on your side. But she was negotiating with Linda the whole time." I stopped breathing. Claire said, "There are emails between Linda and your mother. I found them 6 months into the marriage. That's when I started really drinking. That's when I gave up fighting my mother, because I realized neither family was on our side. Not mine, not yours. We were just pieces in a game between two women who wanted the same thing. Money." The prosecutor asked for the emails to be entered into evidence. They existed. I saw them later. My mother's email address, Linda's email address, discussions about the company, about me, about how to keep me distracted and dependent. My mother, who warned me about Claire, who said something was wrong. She was the one who was wrong. She was playing me from the first day. I sat in that courtroom and felt the floor disappear under me. Everything I thought I knew. Every ally I thought I had. Every version of reality I clung to. All of it was scripted. The jury found Claire guilty on reduced charges. The judge showed mercy because of the coercion evidence. She got 4 years. Linda got 12. David got 15. My mother was never charged. The emails weren't enough for conspiracy. She denied everything. Called Claire a liar. Called me a fool for believing her. I went to my mother's house 2 days after the trial. Sat at her kitchen table, the same table where I ate breakfast as a kid. I said, "Did you do it?" She looked at me. Didn't blink. Said, "I did what any mother would do. I secured your future." I said, "You helped them drug my daughter." She said, "Maya is fine. You're overreacting." I said, "You sold me." She said, "I gave you a wife, a child, a business. You should be thanking me." I stood up, walked to the door. She said, "Mark, you'll come back. You always come back." I didn't go back. I signed the business deal 3 weeks later. $15 million. I used part of it to get Maya the best therapist I could find. I used another part to set Karen up in her own apartment with a restraining order against David. I sold the house. Moved. Started over. Maya is in college now. She calls me every Sunday. Sometimes we don't talk about anything important. Sometimes she tells me about her classes. Sometimes we just sit on the phone in silence. But she calls. Every Sunday. That's enough. Claire wrote me a letter from prison. In Lena. It said, "I'm sorry I couldn't be who you needed, but I'm glad you finally became who you are." I read it once. Put it in a drawer. I don't hate Claire. I don't hate my mother. Hate takes energy. And I don't have energy to give them anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I make coffee. 2 cups. I sit at the counter. And I look at the second cup. And I think about how close I came to drinking what was in that first cup. And I think about how my daughter, my child, carried that poison downstairs in her pocket believing it was a vitamin. Believing she was helping me. That's the part that stays with you. Not the betrayal. Not the courtroom. Not the emails. The part that stays is knowing your child stood in your kitchen at 7 in the morning, shaking, Putting something in your coffee because her grandmother told her it would make you better. And you switched the cups. And she collapsed on the floor. And you called 911. And the whole time, the only person in that house who wasn't lying was the one on the floor. Think about that.